How are you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, today we're going to talk about how predators groom victims. My guest today is going to be Connie Eileen. We've had her on a show before. You guys will be familiar with her. She's also been on Duty Ron as well. And basically, the part of this discussion, the reason why we want to have this discussion is because I think me and Connie, we worked in prisons, we worked in jails. So we're very, very familiar with people trying to prey. I've actually written books on it, Inmate Manipulation Decoded, as well as Breaking Boundaries, Understanding and Preventing Undue Familiarity. But also there's another angle. Connie also used to work, and she could explain it better, but she used to work with women who may have suffered from domestic violence. So she definitely has a lot of expertise when it comes to how predators groom their victims, especially for the long term. So we're going to cover 3 areas of grooming. One is going to be building trust, because that's what predators do. They look to build trust. Then they look to isolate, to break you away from any counter influence. And then the final step is, let me just get, where's the isolation? And then the final step is going to be total control. And that's whether it's physical, emotional, it's all about total control. So let me get Connie. What's up, Connie?
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you? How's life?
I'm good. Life is good. I'm excited. I'm excited for this dialogue. I got a lot of things happening right now
Yes.
between the conference and the foundation and the academy. And I have some other stuff kind of just a brewing. I have the correctional leadership book that's in with the publisher. So we're kind of waiting, fingers crossed that everything goes the way it should. And I am looking forward to just all of it. It's just all goodness. I can't say enough. This journey has been something else. I think in the years that we've known each other, I think we started in 2018 or 2019. I think we
2018.
2018, right?
Yeah, I
We've
think so.
grown, I think, individually so much. And so just to see us as individuals kind of do all the things is just exciting to see.
Yeah, I think 2025 will be a good year for us, hopefully. I'm also getting closer to retirement. So I'm
Hmm.
going to try to see what I can do to expand what I'm doing already. I'm not looking to do any resets, but I'm looking to expand so I don't just pigeonhole myself to one thing. And that's something. It's a bit of an adventure, like you said. But hey, what is it? No risk, no reward, right? Let's just
Yeah.
give it
Oh,
a
yeah.
shot. And hey, Connie, you mind introducing yourself? What do we have going
Oh,
on? How
yeah.
much
Okay.
is
Hi, everyone. I am the founder of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I come to you guys with over, I don't know, maybe 23 or 24 years now of correctional experience. Starting out on Rikers Island back in 2000, and now, and then transitioned into the Department of Corrections in Connecticut. Did some work in domestic violence, some inpatient mental health work, just kind of touched base with all of the various demographics to really understand sort of the impact of incarceration as well as mental illness and addiction on an individual and their ability to succeed in the community. Then fast forward, my daughter diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 9 years old. And so, of course, I had my moments. My woe is me. This is so crazy. This is awful, right? And then I decided to turn that pain into purpose. And so, by doing so, we created the Kendall White Foundation, Rising Above Diabetes. And so now we are helping other children and families navigating type 1 to have positive health outcomes and to provide resources that they may not be able to access in the community. So we've been doing fundraising and all the wonderful things. And that's who I am. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening. I'm excited.
well, that children book that you were able to get to my wife is an amazing book on how to introduce the medical concern to children to give them a better understanding of what it is that they're dealing with. Just a phenomenal read, and it's going to be the first year my wife is going to be using it in her class because
Oh
school just started.
my God.
Yeah, yeah.
I
You
love
made
it.
it. You made it into the Prospect Park school system there, Connie.
Well,
We
that's
made it.
awesome because
Yeah.
Kendall, in the future, Kendall will be doing some book readings so that people could like see she's like a real person, right? And so, yeah, because
Right.
people think all the crazy things, right?
Oh,
Like this isn't something that you would make up. So it's great that the children's book is landing where it needs to be. We're actually trying to get it into the children's hospitals. So if anybody
smart.
knows someone in children's hospitals who can have a conversation with us, please feel free to share that information so that we can get children's book about diabetes into the children's hospital so that kids who are newly diagnosed have a resource and know that there's hope.
Yeah, I may have some connections that way too. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I think I have some connections. I think I can help you there as well, Connie. I'll talk to someone tomorrow actually, and maybe if you can give me. Well, let me just make sure. But I'm pretty sure I have a good contact. If you want to send me another book, I can get it in the hands of who it
Absolutely.
needs to go.
You
So
said
so
nothing but a word.
yeah, absolutely. Hey, so Connie, you do have experience working with those who have been victims of domestic abuse, correct?
Correct. So I can't pinpoint the year. I'm going to say it might have been 2010, 2011. I was transitioning in between Rikers and Connecticut DOC when I kind of landed in Safe Horizon. So I was a domestic violence shelter director for that time period. And there was so much so one, I would have to say it is a very hard job for anyone to do. So from the clinical team, the social workers, you name it, very, very tough for us to, one, stabilize the families who come in. So the women and children who come in, it was a women's shelter. um, Tough. Seeing women come in battered, bruised, children um, afraid, right? Like afraid for anyone to reach out and touch them, afraid to be, separated from mom, just all the things. But certainly a place where I learned a lot about human behavior, because many times we say, why didn't she just leave? Right. And there's so many reasons why, right? I remember we had um, a pretty affluential um, dentist come in, and we were like, what? Why is she in here? And what did we hear about? Right? She talked about him controlling the finances. Right? He had full access and control of her bank account, despite her being a top earner. And he used that as leverage to control her as well as her access to her son. And so sometimes it's not as easy as just leave. And, in the grand scheme of things, there's nothing more precious than your life, right? And many of these instances do not end up in a positive way. So, from a domestic violence lens, this discussion about predators and victims is very relevant.
Yeah, and it also makes it extremely hard if you yourself learn to accept it either as, maybe you're trapped and hopeless, or this is the life somehow that you deserve. So I think, when you yourself don't recognize that you need out, it's very hard for the people to influence you, to take that first step, because that first step is where all that courage comes in, correct?
Yeah. Once you get out, that's it, right? Like, because then there's an entire team of people who's willing to support you. We create a safety plan, and then it's all the things in place, right, to kind of help navigate the legal side of it, right? So, in addition to there being a crime having been committed, right, then there is what are the legal implications or your particular legal challenges that you might face. So, for example, if you have your children with you, but you don't have full custody of them, even though you might be the mom, not having full custody and leaving with the children. I mean, the fact that they were unsafe is sufficient, but there's still a legal process surrounding what happens next. And then for those individuals who say they do pick up and leave, right? And they have now no job, they have no nothing. What the shelter does is actually give them access, right? They get them connected to social services where they can get cash, right? You can still get groceries, you can still do the things you need to do to survive. But oftentimes they're leaving everything that they know and they're coming into a completely different area, right? So if you lived in Queens, you're not going to be, your safety plan isn't in Queens. Your safety plan may be in the Bronx or maybe in Manhattan. So, and I'm sure that is the practice in other states, that your safety plan isn't in the area where you were unsafe.
Right. And Janessa actually mentioned, especially when you leave, sometimes you're leaving with nothing. So
Nothing.
nothing. And I think the reason why I decided to put this show on is I've been trying to get a little bit more interested in true crime and, try to do stuff for the audience that's coming in, as well as maintaining the audience that I have. So I've been watching a little bit of Bundy, reading a book from Kevin Sullivan on Bundy, Ted Bundy. And then you got this guy that's a charmer. And then I was starting to look at a little bit of Charles Manson, and basically you have another guy who knows how to charm, and then knows how to, ultimately groom, knows how to, groom the victim, knows how to build trust, knows how to isolate, and ultimately knows how to take total control. So I thought this would be an interesting topic that we could dive into, because believe it or not, working in a prison or jail, we are working around these individuals. We may not realize it because we're trained to kind of stop it before it gets that far.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, this is definitely a dialogue that I think pertains to true crime, because it does give people a better understanding of why people may fall victim to someone who on the surface we know as a predator, but for some reason they may only see them as just someone that's nice. I won't even say kind, because nice is very surface, kind is genuine. I would say nice, because usually underneath it, there's nothing. There's no depth. There's nothing.
Yeah.
So, Janessa said something too. She said, my ex even manipulated the courts and got full custody of my children.
Jesus.
You've seen that happen, I'm sure, right, Connie?
Yes.
Especially when they have control of the finances. And we'll get to that because that's in there. So the first thing we guys is we're gonna break down grooming into 3 parts. From what we realize, it's going to be about building trust. So the methods that they use to build trust. Then we're going to cross into isolation. That's a little bit more further in the grooming process. That's where your person is isolated for any counter influence. And then the last part is the actual control. That's when it's pretty much set in. And again, watching the stuff I've been watching, I really do feel it is this 3-level process. It literally is. I'm going to get them to trust me, which time can vary depending on, to be honest with you, how vulnerable the victim is. And then the isolation, which once you build that trust and that person is able to put themselves on that pedestal, isolation is really not that hard to do. And then the last part, as I said, will be total control. So one of the things, the first thing when it comes to building trust is going to be obviously the charm and flattery. Something I noticed, Connie, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, is that, when it comes to charm and flattery, you're looking at things that are very surface, that has no depth. And if you got people that seek attention, whether it's attention for the sake of attention, we get those, or whether it's attention because, I got low self-esteem and this person knows exactly what I need to hear to build me up, because maybe it is just superficial. Maybe the self-esteem is more about physical appearance or whatever it is, something superficial, but this person knows exactly what they need to do to build this person up. You'll find that the charm and flattery is very superficial, but I think it works on people who are in turn seeking attention on a superficial manner as well. Right? Correct? I mean,
yeah. So I think to start this conversation, that we need to make sure people understand that grooming is very deliberate and is very calculated. And so they're looking to exploit your vulnerabilities, right? And so oftentimes what you will see is them doing that with someone who's more emotionally or maybe psychologically fragile. So when you talk about, the individual who is lonely or is seeking attention, like that person is almost poised already. They're already primed for this individual, for this predator, right? Because the loneliness and the isolation in of itself have created a vulnerability for that individual. The low self-esteem that you talk about, right, is already something that the groomer is probably tuned into. They're probably already saying like, yeah, okay, you know, she's kind of ready for the thing, right? I don't want to say ready for the taken, but yes, damaged is it, right? And sometimes I think because some people don't have that level of self-awareness to really know that they are vulnerable, right? Yes, there are some that you could look at and you're like, oh my goodness, right? There's some who don't feel great about themselves, but then there's some where you have the predator who's able to find that little crack in the surface where they can peek in and see that you've just got a facade out there, and that underneath it all you might not be the most confident person, or you may not be the one who feels so great about themselves, and there could be some other underlying issues that they've identified that they can exploit.
Yeah, and I got some comments here. Wait, hold on. Wait, what is that? Run a banner with your Cash App info. Oh, thanks, friendly talk. I got work on that. I right now I just kind of do it for the fun. Hey, Miss Connie from Danny Mitchell.
Hi, Danny.
Hey, Connie, that's spot on what you're saying, because I think when it comes to building trust, I think building trust it's a deep development. It's not based on the superficial niceties, because then I'd be walking around trusting everybody I see. And someone holds the door for me when I'm trying to run into a Starbucks. Am I going to trust that person 100% because they opened the door for me? No. But when you have some people that truly are superficial, truly are all about surface, and they do like being flattered, or worse yet, they may need the being flattered. Now that turns out to be, that superficial attention that you're seeking could turn out to be something that you could develop very quickly into a relationship where you trust that person, because this is what I'm thinking, Connie, and tell me this makes sense. You may believe you trust the person because they make you feel good.
Yeah, because they are providing you with that emotional support that you might need in the moment, right? Or that
Oof.
special attention that you might need in the moment, or that common ground that you're hoping to find with someone. You've now found it with this person who probably is positioning themselves in your life as a friend or a mentor or some like trusted figure, right? Like, I mean, you think about, I mean, I don't want us to get too controversial, right? But you think about like the Catholic Church, right? And you think about the relationship that kind of, or the things that happened, right, that we've known have happened, right? How did that happen? That was a trusted figure, right, where kids were trusting of the folks who violated them. You think about, situations where there are trusted figures that come into the lives of children, for example, right? Like prior to us having this conversation, right, we talked a little bit about Larry Nassar, right, and the U.S. gymnastics national team doctor who managed to gain the trust of the people he worked for, so of the entire Olympics organization. He gained the trust of the parents, right, because here it is, he's examining these children with no parental supervision. And so there was a process for him to be able to gain access and build relationship and build trust over years of being the Olympian doctor.
Yeah, and Connie, let's add something else you added today. You're going to make me jump ahead a little bit, which is good. So I have a list of things that fall under the building trust. You know what I want to do? So it's kind of relates to charm and flattery. Remember, guys, when we do these things, sometimes they bleed into each other. Connie, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because part of the building trust falls with establishing authority or expertise. You want to hear something funny? a lot of these people get into these positions of authority, like you got the doctor you just mentioned, and someone here also mentioned where is this, systematic predators with priests. Think about this. They're put in a position of authority, already a position of trust, because you trust the position. I mean, it's sad to say, but it's true. I trust the position to automatically put the person in the position. And that makes it tough, because if you are doing something wrong, a lot of people will not look at the person, but look at the position and literally think, no way would a doctor do this. It's not no way would Connie do it. It's
Right.
no way. Sorry, Connie, you happen to be the example there. I don't know where the hell that came from, but no way would Connie do it. It's, and then the funny thing is, the person making the allegation is actually compared to the position and not the other person. They're the weight of the word is based on the position they hold. That was I agree. I think the reason why it's tough is because at the end of the day, I mean, if you told me, this guy Nash, let's say he wasn't a doctor, but let's say he was, already, I don't know, some hobo on the street, whatever it is, something that didn't have such a high title. I don't know. I'm just,
No, I get what you're saying, though. The fact that he's a doctor, you automatically are going to trust that he's doing the right things, right? Like, he's taken this oath. There's no way he would do the thing, whatever that thing is, right? And I think that's where, you have to kind of always, I don't want to say always be on guard, but you have to be vigilant, right? Because it doesn't really matter what the title is. A predator is a predator, right? And when the opportunity presents, the predator is going to capitalize on that opportunity. And in the beginning, you talked a little bit about timing, right? And sometimes I think it's timing and opportunity.
Yeah, and I like what Eileen said, coaches too. You want to hear something funny? The expertise things can fall both ways. The expertise could fall, how I'm viewed by the victim, but as I just mentioned, also could pose on how I'm viewed by other people in case the victim tries to challenge me. So that position of authority really does protect a predator. That's why, like, even when I was watching Ted Bundy, he was seeking his way into politics. I mean, he was respected because of what he was trying to become, what he was trying to move into. But he was considered a very smart individual, background in law, psychology, working his way through politics. So I think a lot of people believe, especially if you are a predator, let's say, sometimes you may feel, let me seek a position to hide behind it. Let me become that. Let me become that priest.
Right.
Because then what the funny thing here is about that? Think about this. One more thing, if I may mention something. When it comes to building trust, I could lean already on the position to build that.
Mm-hmm.
Both ways, from the victim and from the in case the victim challenges me.
Yeah.
That was pretty good insight. I didn't think about that. And I could have brought Jeffrey Epstein too. Or R. Kelly.
There's a whole bunch of them.
R. Kelly, right?
How about Harvey? What's his last name?
Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah. How about Harvey?
And you look at Harvey, damn well that was the position. That's all I'm just saying, but it's true. Yes. They lean on their position of authority.
Yes.
And then, and sadly, some of those positions, we'll probably get to it later. They could also use those positions for consequences too. So you want to mess with me, I'm in a position like, to fire you or ruin your career.
Yeah.
Well, so another
the woman that helped Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, I might have said her name wrong, but Ghislaine Maxwell, who was grooming the girls in preparation for their encounter with Epstein.
Yep.
Right. Yep. I mean, you think about all the people who surrounded R. Kelly, who brought women in, who supported whatever the thing was, right? Like, the grooming can happen from even just at the potential to somehow be influenced, right? Like, they thought R. Kelly was going to teach them the world, right? He's teaching them how to sing. He's given them this great opportunity to be as great as he is, right? And so here he isn't a priest, but there's still something that he has that's kind of serving as the bait.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? Joe just got home. Hey, Joe, what's funny is a lot of people may actually know something's up and they may feel it, but what they wind up doing is they wind up minimizing the feeling and leaning on the position, saying, you know what, but they're a doctor, or when you're at a mall.
I must be wrong because he's a doctor.
Yeah, he's a Santa Claus at the mall. Why would I want my kids on top of Santa Claus on the mall? He's a nice old man. He's just playing Santa Claus.
Sit on his lap. And your kid is like,
no. Yeah. Dad, this Santa smells like vodka or whatever it is, something. So the next one I got, Connie, again, in the efforts to build trust. Now, I want to tell you, the next one I'm bringing out to you right now is something that you may not consciously be aware that it's happening. This is a very unique move. I know me and Connie definitely have witnessed it in our world, but when you guys are talking to people, once I give you this, I'm telling you right now, once I give you this, you're going to watch people where they interact with you, because I'm going to tell you something right now. When it comes to building a rapport, or when it comes to building trust, if that's how we want to exchange or equate it. I mean, I wouldn't really equate rapport with trust, but I guess in corrections world, sometimes it's, but guys, mirroring and empathy. Connie, how many times have you chatted with someone and you're posing a certain way and then eventually they start to pose the same way?
Yeah. or when you start shaking your head and people start shaking their head, right? Like, I think in some instances it's just unconscious, right? People don't even realize they're doing it. But then for the person who is being very intentional about trying to establish commonality, about trying to establish that common ground, I think absolutely you see them start to do things that now feel familiar to you, right? And so you're more likely to trust because this person isn't acting all crazy and wild. Like, their mannerisms, their behaviors seem to align with me and the things that I do. I see myself in that person, which is crazy.
Yeah, but it's crazy, but it's subtle. But you want to hear something funny, guys? I mean, eventually we're gonna go towards the end where we tell you ways to kind of check if it's happening to you, but just to kind of get a little ahead because it relates to this right now. You know what? Your body is going to recognize things before you can mentally put it together. It's just your survival. No, you know that, right? I mean, we work in corrections. Sometimes we feel something, but maybe we minimize it because we don't want the conflict. And then eventually we start to justify it. We start to find ways to justify. And the next thing you know, we've accepted whatever it is. But I'll tell you, when it comes to, let's say, the superficial charm, the mimicking body, if it's just not natural from the other end, you recognize that. You don't see it as being sincere. You see it as being superficial. You know what I mean? Like the person that starts giving you compliments, but it's like, yo, you're complimenting me, but there's no depth to it because you don't even know me.
Right.
So usually the compliments are going to be superficial. You're pretty, whatever it is. And it's funny because if I could tell Connie, okay, me and Connie just met, I may say you're pretty, and then superficial because Connie, let's say we don't really know each other, superficial. But you know what's funny? I know this may sound crazy, but let's say you're married to someone for 30 years and all of a sudden they just come out of the blue and say, you know what? You're so pretty. And that's the person you're married. It's like that may have a little bit more meaning because that person knows you. You know, I mean, that person, it just got more depth to it. Maybe now I'm going to have to, babe, you're pretty. There you go. I'll just toss one out there. Yeah, I'll toss one out there real quick because I didn't realize it. But does that make sense, kind of? Because it seems, same thing with you. You know it because if you can tell, because here's the funny thing, Connie, and you mentioned it spot on. The funny thing is that you unconsciously are moving your body. I mean, you're not aware, but you're just, moving with the dialogue. They're making the intentional effort.
Right.
And you should be able to see the conflict between, their intentional effort of trying to kind of move their body in accordance with what they're trying to say, to compliment. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. And in many instances, it could also be their body telling on them, right? Like here they are trying to put up this facade. They're putting on the show, right? And they think they're in control of it, but natural engagement with people, you begin to sometimes mirror certain things. And so they may not even realize that their body is starting to do the things that they see because they're so engaged in what's going on here. So
Yeah, that's Joe.
I love Joe's response.
Yeah. Joe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But what were you saying? So what were you saying, Connie? I mean,
No,
did he lose
after
your train of thought there?
I saw Joe's message, I got distracted. I lost my train of thought.
Well, basically, we're talking about and then Connie, I got to mention this too, empathy, because that was part of it as well. I put meriting and empathy together because I do believe empathy is basically it's sometimes it could come out as being false, and I think I think it's easy for someone to sense it because I have seen people try to generate tears.
Oh my God.
Because they feel the moment requires it. And it's like, yeah, and it's like, I'd rather you be stoned than to try to generate it. But I believe people think they need to do that so they can connect. And I think what we're saying here is basically if you're on the other side of that, you should be able to see the conflict in, how they're intentionally trying to express their empathy, right? Because it comes in the conflict of how it's being expressed, correct? Because it's intentional.
Yeah, it's intentional, but everything about a predator is intentional. Everything about the groomer is intentional. And I think that's the thing we have to remember, that there is intentionality behind everything that they do. So every conversation, there is an intention, right? An intention to get you closer, an intention to get you away from someone, and an intention to get you to let your guard down, right? And all too often, it happens because they struck the right chord, right? They hit the right nerve. They happen to connect to you at the right time. Today I'm feeling sad, or today I'm not feeling myself. Today I think I look ugly. Like whatever that thing is that happens today when this particular engagement is happening, I think, one thing for sure is that they're pretty intelligent, right? To be able to tune in almost instinctively to the things that are weaknesses.
Well, and we're going to get to that actually. You're 100% correct. That's what we're going to get to. Hey, friendly talker. I have the vulnerability sharing. That's in one of them. That's in the when it comes to right here, building trust. Also, we'll cut into that one next. I just want to say, friendly talker mentioned something that's pretty cool. It's a problem when shows like Catch a Predator becomes prime time watching, and Chris Hansen becomes famous. It's so true. But I will tell you one thing: these predators used to operate in the dark. So I think it was a great idea, one, to expose them so we can actually see that these predators look like everyday Joe, everyday Jane. I know people like, oh, these people look like they got to be monsters, but they don't look like them. I'm working on.
So creating secrecy is a crucial element of grooming, right? Predators typically encourage secrecy to hide their actions, right? So the last thing they want is you telling someone else what they're doing, and the person who's not being groomed is like, "What the hell are you talking about? Why are you doing that?" Right? But the fact that secrecy is a major aspect of grooming, I think that's something that we have to remember. They often convince the victim that secrecy is necessary, right? Because other people won't understand. Or like if they reveal the relationship, there could be some consequences to the victim or the predator. And so this remaining in the dark thing has been like, this is how I continue to do this. I can't be known. I can't be found out.
Right. And then it is entertaining because we like to try to see how the person is able to manipulate why they're there. And then obviously the Chris Hansen, I kind of compare him to what's his name? Juan Quiones. The guy that just comes out and just like, what would you do? Hi, it's Juan Quiones. Right. Hi, it's Chris Hansen. Okay, so I'm glad that everybody knows who you are. So hopefully they're doing it for the right reasons. It doesn't matter. The outcome is still you got a predator off the street.
Right.
But someone mentioned love bombing. That's exactly what we're kind of covering here with building trust, because it really is this superficial attempt to compliment, give gifts, and we're going to have part of that. So we did mirroring and emptying. I might as well cross into this now, Connie, because you mentioned it. The shared vulnerability. But Connie, you notice I mentioned something real quick. I mentioned shared vulnerability because a lot of predators, they will also. This may actually be counter to what a lot of people think. But there are a lot of predators in an effort to build a rapport at first, guys. We're talking about at first. They're willing to not be perfect themselves. They're willing to maybe look for a little bit of a sympathy card or a victim card so they can get you to be more open. You know, the tit for tat, the obligation, if you will. If I'm vulnerable, you're vulnerable. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. But for me, I feel like, so they're just trying to get more information out of you, right? So sometimes is the vulnerability real? For sure. Sometimes, the predator had been molested, right? Sometimes they were emotionally abused or physically abused or whatever the situation was. But most of the time, this tit for tat, this sharing, I don't know that it's even truthful, right? This sharing is so that I can get you to create almost it's like I'm setting the stage for us to create this intense emotional bond, which is going to lead to you feeling like you can't do without me, right? Like then I become crucial to your existence. We like it's almost equivalent to the love bombing, right? Like if I can overwhelm you with affection and emotions and praise and promises, there's almost like this emotional entrapment that happens. And then what do I do then? Right? Because now the control is there. Because I want you to keep telling me these things. I want you to continue to shower me with adoration and all that goodness because it makes me feel good. But like I'm also not recognizing you've created this intense emotional bond that now you can control me with.
Yeah, and so she asked a good question, Janice, about are narcissists and predators the same? I'm going to say no. Here's what I got. I got to get your thoughts on this, Connie. But I'm thinking narcissists. So hold on, let me think. So I'm thinking narcissists are more for like building their ego, maybe looking for admiration. I know it's funny. I'm kind of seeing narcissist, even though they're both probably nouns. I'm seeing narcissist as a noun and a predator as a verb. Because of what it is. And I would say a narcissist is more about admiration because, again, they're all about themselves, so very ego fulfilling. And I would say a predator is about power and control. So I think they're two different things because you can have someone that's a narcissist not be a predator, and you could also have somebody that's a predator that's really not a narcissist. So I wouldn't equate them both. I think one is ego driven, so admiration, admiration, as I mentioned, and the predator would be more about power and control. Great question, but I think I'm correct. What's your thoughts on that, Connie?
No, I agree 100%. I feel like the narcissist, their engagement with you is all about them and their needs, whereas the predator is more behavioral and it is more, I think, they are, I think, deliberately just manipulating in order to gain control, or right, gain the control to get you to do what it is that they want you to do, right? So theirs, I think, is more focused on power and control, whereas I think the narcissist is more focused on superiority and their self-worth.
Yeah, and I agree. So even she mentioned, yeah, but what is a narcissist about power and control? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say even though they may manipulate for, if you want to say some level of power and control, it's more just about themselves. You know, it's more about how you view them. And for the predator, it truly is control. Like, I mean, physical or mental control of the individual. Like, I mean, literally physical. Does that? I mean,
Yeah, so I'm reading something. It says The narcissist is seeking constant validation, attention, and admiration to reinforce their sense of superiority or self-worth.
So you know what? Then you're right. The narcissist would be about the control, would be about their superiority over others, but it wouldn't necessarily be about actual control. It's just maintaining something for them.
Right. I'm
their
better than you,
self-image.
and I want
Yeah.
you to know I'm better than you. Right. Like, I think simply put, it's like, I'm better than you. And so me doing anything that I do is just to show that I'm better than you. Whereas I think with the predator, them doing the things that they do is because they do want to control you.
Yeah, and it's either financially, emotionally, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's really controlling you, not your perspective. Would that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's more about controlling you over your perspective. So as a predator, I want to control you physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever it is. But maybe as a narcissist, I may want to control your perspective and how you see me. Because I think ultimately for the narcissist, a narcissist actually, I think real quick, I think I know what she's trying to say here, because sometimes narcissists have such an inflated view of self that people become objects to them. That's why they're able to commit their crimes. Because a person is
but it's still just about them.
It's still just about them.
It's still just about them and their ego, right? I'm doing these things to show that I could do it. Because I'm smarter than the cops. I'm better than the whoever, right? Like, I'm bigger, I'm badder, I'm whatever. It is about them and that validation, not so much the control. So I think the distinction is the motivation, even if some of the behaviors may be similar.
I would say I think being a narcissist could fuel a predator.
Absolutely.
But I wouldn't say, obviously I wouldn't equate them. And haven't we all dated a narcissist or two? I know. All right. So the shared vulnerabilities, I think we discussed, basically that's just a way to get people to open up. So I think we did that. And then we have inclusivity. So that's basically making the person feel so special that they're the only one, that basically, it's just you. It's nobody else. You're that special one. You're on that pedestal. And again, this goes back to the people that want that attention, that especially if it's right away. Like if it's just established right away that you're the one without even testing the waters, I think when some of these things,
love at first sight. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, which is crazy, because you love the idea, but not the actual person. You love what's presented until the person first farts. Now, but I'm saying, like, with the exclusivity, some of these things, if they go too quick, like if the charm goes too quick, if the you're that one moves too quick, some of it is, I mean, obviously, not 100%, but some of it you have to ask yourself, like, this is moving way too quick, and for me, it's really superficial because we haven't developed it yet. So I would like to have a relationship where it does take time to develop. So if we do say these words have depth. So I think the part with the predator and the prey is, let me rush through it. Let me get this through. Let me see if I could toss it out, because I think the vulnerability here when this works is I get someone that wants attention. I get someone that doesn't want to be alone. And what I do is I quickly, as they said before, love bomb them. Just keep on doing what I got to do to keep that attention strong. And the person just loves the idea of the attention, but they equate that to actually trusting the individual. And it's funny because, as I said, when you ask them, like, what is it about this guy that you're in love with them in the first day? And what they'll say is, he makes me feel good. It has nothing to do with who the person is, but rather how they make them feel. So if you're an attention-seeking person, and if I know you, let's say Connie, let's say, which you're not, but let's say you're an attention-seeking person, and you say, well, why do you love? Well, I love him because it makes me feel good. Yeah, but anybody that gives you attention makes you feel good. You know what I mean? I mean, what about him? I want to know about him. You're not giving me anything about him because you don't know anything about him.
Right.
What's your thoughts on that, Connie?
So, I mean, for me, I think this strategy is all about making the victim believe that they're special, right? That whether it's emotionally, psychologically, or physically, like, they are making this person feel like they are everything. And I think it plays a significant role in simply deepening the predator's control, right? Like, because now they're fostering this dependency, this like this emotional isolation, right? And I think ultimately it makes it harder for the victim to seek help or see that the predator is being manipulative, because they're so um blinded. Yeah, those rose colored glasses, especially if they're giving them something that they need or they want, right? Like, I've always longed for someone to love me this way, right? To feel these ways about me, to treat me so special, to understand me. Oh my God, he understands everything, right? Like, and so here I'm giving her everything she wants, right? And this illusion creates this emotional investment that makes it even more difficult for um, the victim to leave or even question the motives of the predator.
Yeah, and I want to mention something. When they start to speed it up, because again, this is going to be something where there's a vulnerability. Let's say the person really just wants that attention, so the predator is able to jump on that. I know the one lady mentioned Joyce Mitchell, 100%. They gave her attention; she wanted it. But as we're talking about the love bombing, it all makes sense, because even if I can compliment you, that's attention to you from me. But I could also give you gifts that you could show off to others. So usually the superficial person that may want that attention also may want gifts that are a bit pricey, so they could show off and basically brag about the attention they're given, but also getting more attention. I mean, it feeds the superficial. It really does feed the superficial.
One piece of that too, though, is that when the predator has been able to establish this dynamic, they also can use this very dynamic to garner more control, right? Like, if I now stop telling you how much I love you, I now stop doing all these wonderful things, and you don't know why I stopped. Now it can be used as something that I give or take. It becomes like a privilege. It's a privilege now for me to give it and take it away. If you don't comply with the things that I want you to do, I can now withhold all of my affection.
Yeah, and you kind of, but you're right. That kind of jumps us ahead a little bit. So it's good to know it's emotional blackmail. Oh, Russ said it too. I actually have it. It's coming up. It's emotional blackmail. It's actually in the part where it comes to control after we talk about isolation. But you're right. Eventually, it becomes something that the person is so connected to that it's no longer a want, it's a need. Like, so when you enter this relationship at first with a predator, the reciprocal, it's really just, let's say it's the one way. I give you, Connie, I'm giving you attention. I'm saying, what you want to hear for whatever reason you want to hear, whether you're superficially looking for attention or whether you need it to build yourself up. But eventually what's going to wind up happening is either you become accustomed or not. But if you do connect it to so much of yourself, it's no longer a want, where maybe originally, it could have been, but if you do have low self-esteem, it'd be more in your mind a need. But eventually what's going to wind up happening here is that's going to be leverage for me, because at any part I could start pulling it back. And then next thing you know, I think the moment, if we're entering this relationship and we're trying to maintain it by, and this is definitely a predator in this case here, but it takes a lot of energy to keep that going, that relationship that way on the superficial. It really does. It means every day you just got to keep on, compliments and gifts and whatever it is, because the initial attraction here for the one is the attention, right? So the predator has no problem doing that because they don't have feelings. They're getting ready to utilize. So they're getting ready to use you. So this is no problem for them. They superficial all day. This is what they do. This is how they navigate themselves. But with that said, as time progresses and finally I decide, you know what, I'm not going to give you something today. Well, you've been so used to it, you're going to go back up and automatically think that you've done something wrong. And now I got the guilt card on you.
Yeah.
Only because you're seeking the attention so bad, it becomes a need that the moment I stop giving it to you, you're going to internalize guilt. You're going to feel that you have done something wrong for me to stop doing it. I believe so. And that's that. And we'll get to that. That is the emotional blackmail of it all. And I see that, I mean, again, even on a lesser scale, but all these things play out even in the correction setting, by the way. So these are things you learn through time when you work around them. The last one I got for building trust, Connie, is this, and you kind of, and it actually, it's funny, it's kind of on the other end of what we just talked about, but it's emotional bonding. So this is the other end of the emotional blackmail. But it depends on how you develop those emotions. If you're developing the emotions on the superficial, then it's just a break in the action that's causing it. But there is emotional bonding where you connect on the vulnerability. So I share vulnerability with you in an effort, in a hope that you share one with me, and then we start connecting on this shared vulnerability. Would you agree?
Yeah, but I mean, I guess like in this conversation, it's like, so we know this is not real, right? So, I mean, clearly the victim doesn't know it's not real, right? But if I just put my common sense on the side for a second, and I'm just focusing on this emotional bond, I am doing everything in my power to make sure we maintain this emotional bond and that we deepen this emotional bond. I may take it a step further and start doing all these other things that the predator might not even ask me to do, because I just don't even want to risk us not having this emotional bond, and I just want more of it, right? And so when you can't see that there is foul play amiss, right? Like I just see this spiraling for the victim and not being able to kind of reel it in and recognize like, hey, you don't even have to do all of that stuff. But the predator at that point has you in the right place, right? Like I don't even have to do all this manipulation and power moves and control, because I've done enough and you're doing all these things on your own. And that in of itself will become their way out. Like, I didn't make her do that. She did that because she wanted to. I never asked you for money. I never asked you to do those things for me. I never told you that that's what I wanted. You did it because you wanted to do it.
Yeah. And Connie, the key word there, I think you would agree, is going to be dependency now.
Yep.
That's the emotional bonding. That's playing with the heartstrings, and however, you get to someone's heart. But once you get to their heart, if you're a predator, you have them on a string.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
it's
no one
true.
wants to feel hurt, right? That's just human. No one wants to feel hurt. And someone who's already damaged or broken in a way that is being manipulated and taken on this ride, the devastation that this is going to leave behind is immeasurable.
Yeah, and kind of on top of that too, I agree. And before we go into the next step of the grooming process, I want to mention that when it comes to that dependency, guys, that truly is, I think, the main reason why people are afraid to separate, because there's so much conflict that comes with that separation. Because if I have given you a big piece of myself, and now you have it, I have to now trust you to protect it. So now the problem, no, but it's true, right? If I've given you a piece of myself, the last thing I want is to cause conflict, because you have a big piece of who I am. So a lot of the times the people are afraid to, one, cause conflict with their loved one, because there is a level of dependency. And then the other thing is the conflict within yourself, because I fucked up. Maybe I was superficial in nature, and that's why this person found me, is because of my own actions. Because here I am. I was a target because, unfortunately, I'm attracted to attention. Because I think if you really look at this first part, when it comes to building trust, and know that really trust, it is something that takes a while to develop. So for those predators that are able to develop a speedy trust with somebody, I have to believe that somewhere along the line, what initiates the relationship has to be superficial. Guys, listen, I get some things aren't 100%. I mean, you get people that meet for the first time and truly do become, lifelong marriages. But remember, in the context of predators, if I was a predator, I'm looking for the shortest amount of time to investing something so I can get the biggest outcome. I'm not going to look to, right now. So I'm going to look for someone that's either trusting automatically, so someone that's very gullible, or if I could build something superficially. And then that person just wants to seek attention. And then, hey, now it's not even about the maintaining of the trust, by the way. In this case here, it's the maintaining of the attention that they become dependent on. So again, maybe in this case here, the trust equates, in regards to the consequence, the trust equates to the attention, in regards to the consequence. Now, remember, we have 3 steps to grooming. So the first part was the trust, building the trust. The second part is the part that scares me. Actually, you see this a lot with cults and stuff like that. But it's the isolation. It's when you're able to pull that person away and there is no counter influence. So now I want, when we look at the context of what's coming below here, remember something. If I'm looking to, manipulate, let's say Connie, the big thing here is I cannot have her around people that can counter influence me. If you think about the prison world real quick, if there's an inmate that's trying to manipulate me, they're not going to manipulate me in front of staff where staff can correct me. They're going to get me alone, and they're going to try to do it where there's no counter influence. And this is going to be unique, Connie, as we explore this, because we'll talk about how people that manipulate, predators, can break your relationships with other people, so they don't have that counter influence. But isolation, right? Would you agree that's basically someone's attempt to get rid of any type of counter influence?
Absolutely. I mean, so just imagine you don't have, the insights of friends or family or any other support system, and this person becomes the only person that you talk to, the only person that can console you, that can speak life into you or not, right? Whatever the thing is, that's the only person that can do that. And so I think for the victim, oftentimes as this process of manipulation happens or isolation happens, the victim sometimes starts to isolate themselves, either because they believe like the predator's affections are all that they need, or because they fear losing those affections if they maintain any sort of outside relationships. And so I think this isolation, or the process of isolation, makes the victim just even more dependent on the predator for all their emotional support. And it makes it easier for that predator to exploit them without any interference.
And guys, that's why it's placed right before control, because it's hard to control someone if they still have resources. So your objective is full. The predator's objective is full control. So one of the things we have here, so this is kind of how they would, try to their tactics behind the isolation. One is creating distance, which could happen many ways. I know in some cases they could create distance by causing arguments between each other. Like basically, if me and Connie are close and there's someone, let's say Russ, who's in the chat, is trying to get me alone and trying to, isolate me, then he'll cause
Russ
a conflict.
Is in the chat trying to get you alone.
Yeah, trying to get me alone. Russ could counter. Russ would not want me speaking. So the moment there's an issue, he could quietly on the side fuel the concern to the point where I actually start believing Russ's perspective is Connie's perspective. And here I am. And the scary thing here is that here I am when you have this situational person, you have this person trying to fuel the situation. What's going to wind up happening is the separation I have with Connie based on what Russ is doing is really based on assumption that Russ does not want me to close off with Connie. Russ is going to feed me everything I can as if they're fact, where at the end of the day, you don't know if it's fact. It's assumption. And if I have a concern, my best bet is to really go to Connie and try to see what, if any of these assumptions are true, and try to work it out.
But we have a special bond and no one else will understand. No one else loves you the way I do. No one else is going to protect you the way I will. And so when you have that in your ear, right? While you're trying to make some sense out of nonsense, right? Like all you need is Russ to kind of just fan the flames a little bit, right? You don't need much.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something, Russ. That's a real piece of shit move. Russ is in it. No, but you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, you know what's funny? The generalized animosity usually comes from when there's no discussion of what's being assumed. So now you got this predator does not want you to take the assumption of what they believe are facts to go ahead and find out if they really are facts. So again, you guys, that's an easy one to know that's being played. You know, if you have a concern, that's your concern. You may vent to somebody.
But it's not easy if I can't see through that.
Well, that's why we're doing it. Right,
you know what I'm saying? Like, it's
that's
not easy if I can't see that this person is being manipulative, right? And it's not until like the blinders are kind of raised a little bit, and like I can actually see that this person has created this special bond. They're discouraging relationships with like family and friends. You know, they're making me think things that aren't real just because they have this level of influence on me. And so now, because they've created this fracture and I'm believing that this thing is a thing, I'm also spending more time with the predator than I am with the people that I should be with, because the predator is reinforcing all these things and then giving me the support that I need. Right. Yeah. So the predator is shifting things in many ways.
Yeah, and Russ said that. That's Eric about the word rapport. So you know what's funny? As we're going through this, we actually covered a couple of things, so we can get rid of sowing doubt because that's what the person's doing. And by the way, that's the lesser extreme, because once you start getting to the control, that's where the gaslighting comes in that Russ mentioned. But right now, sowing doubt is part of changing perspective. Not necessarily the full effect of changing reality, but it starts to help the predator to go ahead and start that subtle shift, because it's a subtle shift. And then we also mentioned the controlling the social interaction in the process, because at the end of the day, if I'm sowing doubt, or if I'm creating something, the moment I know, or let's say Russ, we'll keep Russ an example, the moment Russ knows that I talked to Connie, the effort to remove the assumption, we will solve it. We just need to initiate it. So Russ's objective here at this point would be not for me to initiate it. So his step, every time I want to take a step forward, he's going to wind up pushing me back. And I will say, just in clarity here, even with inmates, when they go to play games, if you want to talk shit about another officer, whatever it is, I'm going to go to the other officer. I'm not going to go ahead and allow you to fuel something. I'm going to go to the other officer and we're going to figure it out. I would like to think that, same thing here. We should, I know this may sound crazy, because obviously there are relationships that you can't preserve, but I will be honest with you. There are relationships that you developed, and there are no, it's never going to be perfect, but there are relationships that, can take a dent or two, to be honest with you, as opposed to some relations that I get are very superficial, but there are some that could take a dent or two. And I think when you have developed relationships, those are the strong ones where that predator needs to keep you away from. So a lot of their focus are going to be on the people that you are strongly connected to, because those are the ones that have the greater influence on you. So I would say for those relationships that are allowed to take a dent or two, those are the relationships that you have to make sure you don't let assumption divide. That means, I'm sorry. Hey, I know you don't want me to talk, but I'm going to figure it out with them.
Yeah.
At this point, I mean, I'm venting to you. I get it. But I know where the solution is. The solution is ultimately, I may be venting to you. That doesn't mean I want advice. It means I got to air it out. But I know ultimately the solution is for me to go back to Connie and figure it out. But yeah, I think that's, and then this one's an easy one. Part of the isolation, but and maybe you've dealt with this a little bit too. Monitoring communication. That's more of another level of control, correct?
Yeah, I mean, so and that monitoring communication is in any kind of way. Like, that's whether it's phones, whether it's access to your phone, I even think about like folks who fight over having the password to someone's phone, right? Like why are we doing, I mean, in relationships, there are some relationships where it doesn't even matter, right? But there is an insistence, I feel like, when you are in these sort of predatory sort of spaces, that we've seen that happen. um I remember a woman saying she wasn't allowed to get the mail. um the predator got the mail. He opened everything, he looked at everything, and he didn't want people sending her mail communication, like physical mail communication. So much so that she had gotten a PO box.
Mm.
And when he discovered that she had a PO box, he went to the PO box and got the mail out the PO box as well. She didn't know he knew it. So, like, I think it is controlling any aspect of information you receive that could in any way shift your perspective on where this relationship is or where it's going.
Hey Connie, they're asking about the books because someone heard at the beginning. So I have the two books here: Inmate Manipulation Decoded, which talks about manipulation but could apply to the real world, and then I
Mhm.
have Breaking Boundaries: Understanding and Preventing Undue Familiarity and Correction. So these are really about manipulative behaviors, but I would definitely equate these to behaviors of predators. Connie, what's your book right now? The books that you have out?
So I have The Cage Was Her Cocoon. I don't think I have a copy of it next to me. I also have Mommy, Please Don't Let Me Die Here. This is the one of the diabetes books that we just have out on the market. I also have this one, Kendall's Diabetes Adventures. This is the one that's entering the New Jersey schools.
Yeah, Prospect Park, baby.
And then there is the self care guide, Nurturing You. It is the Caregiver's Corner, Nurturing You, really talking about the caregiver and ways that the caregiver needs to support and sort of fill their cup, although they're taking care of others. In this instance, it happens to be diabetes, but I have found more people not dealing with diabetes actually purchase that caregiver's journal, because people are taking care of elderly parents now. And so, how do I pour back in when I'm doing that? People are caring for folks with all kinds of long term illnesses. And so, the burnout is very real. And that book really does give good insight into what do you do in order to stay healthy and whole during this journey. Yeah.
Yeah, and guys, we have the links in the description, and for Connie's books are also available on Amazon, correct?
Yes.
So Connie, is it under Connie Eileen or Constantine
Yes, it's
Eileen?
under Constantine Aline. So they can go to thecagewashercocoon.com if they don't want to go to Amazon, but you can go to Amazon and get the book. And then Mommy, Please Don't Let Me Die Here is the other one. So all of it is out there. I can send you the links, Kanji.
Yeah, please do, and then we'll post it up. And then I also have, before we get to control, we have two more. We have Fostering Dependency, which we kind of ran to. Now this is before the actual photo, the full control, but fostering dependency can come in many ways. We talked about it before, where it could be related to how you make the person feel. They can become very dependent on you making them feel good, where they can't get it from anywhere else. And think about this; it makes sense with the isolation, right? I'm blocking you from everyone. So the people that are there that could make you feel good, now they're not allowed in your life anymore. So now kind of dependent on me. And that becomes the emotional blackmail because, and we'll get to that in the part of control, but that becomes what I can control. Fostering dependency could be on anything, as we met, financial, but that kind of bleeds into the next one when it comes to control. And the last one I got here, Connie, is, oh, where'd it go? Oh, I have emotional isolation. I don't know why that's not in there. Let me just add that real quick because I put emotional isolation in there. But what's your thoughts on that, Connie? Emotional isolation. Why I type it in?
So we know that once we are looking for fulfillment from one place, we are already in a bad space. I think that as we journey through, or as this victim is kind of journeying through the emotional isolation, they are trying to figure out like what's like they don't even know where to go to get the support anymore, right? If they're
Right.
feeling confused, they're feeling, concerned, or even if they had that aha moment, it's like, I don't even know who I can go talk to anymore, because along this way, I've burned so many bridges, right?
You're
Like
disconnected.
I've disconnected from so many people. It may be difficult for me to pop back up and be like, hey, can I talk to you about this thing? So now you feel like you're on an island. I need to figure this out. I got to make this happen. I got to do the thing, whatever that thing is for you. Um, and what I would say to that person is that when you got real friends and you got family out there, they don't care that you've been in isolation all this time. They want the best for you. And
Yeah.
so speak up, right? Like, hey, this is what I've been going through. I feel trapped, because that's what it feels like. You end up feeling like you are trapped in this situation and you can't get out.
Yeah, and guys, sometimes that emotional isolation could also be played to the people that would be your support. So again, if let's say Connie right now is in a bad relationship, even though our relationship, let's say I'm Connie's close friend, but for some reason I'm being pushed out. Sometimes you got to make the effort a little bit to try to keep the relationship strong, even though it could be draining on you. But as I said, Connie at this point may not know what's happening, but I think eventually, hopefully, when the person starts to realize, especially after watching this video, they're going to need that support. So you may not, like, all of a sudden it's like, well, Connie, I'm mad at you because you dissed me years ago, and let it go. Connie realized now, because we all have bad moments, but again, this is a relationship that had dents. So Connie's allowed to have a bad moment or two, but once that person is ready to come back, you should kind of welcome it, because I really do think when it comes to that predator, they play so much into that person's head that it's really not the person making decisions anymore. It's the other person. And that kind
And
of
they're
gets,
also making decisions through the lens of nobody else loves you like I do.
yeah.
No one else is going to care. No one else is going to understand you like I do. It's like they are so far down the road that you got to recognize that that person, like you said, isn't that person in that very moment.
Which puts you in the inferior position. So you got to
Mhm.
realize something. It's funny if you think about what you just said, Connie, is this person that's there, is every effort is ultimately an effort to hold themselves up at that higher pedestal, and the victim of the game and also everyone around them is meant to be down here. So if you're trying to lift that person up, you got to realize that until we separate this connection fully, you're not helping the person you think you're helping.
No.
You're actually creating more of a divide, because that person is really just on the string of the puppet, of the puppet master. So the last part of this is the control part. This is the part where we're kind of bleeding into, because you saw the isolation really did lead to a little bit of that. But remember, the isolation part, the big difference here was the isolation was about controlling the environment. Now, this is truly leads into controlling the person, even though they kind of bleed in, but this is more about, the person now. So again, this is something that once you're down this path, this is where it truly can become dangerous. Now, gaslighting, we're all familiar with that term now. Gaslighting is, I guess, an effort to confuse the person, change their reality. Kind of, we talked about before, when you sow doubt, basically this is kind of like that level where everything's kind of plugged in now, and you're starting to shift their perspective. So the way they see the world is really based on the way the predator wants them to see the world, and not the way the world really is. And that's an issue, because when you get to this point here, you got to realize something, guys. They have learned to accept what has come at them. They have learned to justify their existence in this world that has been created for them. So now this world is their reality, and any effort to shift them from that could initially get some serious resistance, because there's so much involved in trying to get that person to go to the right perspective. Remember, there's a lot of mistakes that was made here, a lot of conflict that has to come to the surface. So it may get to the point where this person just rather accept the reality, because it's a lot easier to deal with because I'm used to it already, than to take the risk and God knows what's going to happen. And that's where the support comes in to mitigate that. What's your thought on that, Connie, with the gaslighting?
I mean, the gaslighting is hard, right? Like, because if you are already struggling to see what reality is, like, I feel like you don't even realize that you're being gaslit.
Oh,
right?
that's a good point.
You know,
That's a good point.
you know, you're kind of internalizing all the things that the person may be saying that is gaslighting. But when you've gotten to this stage in the grooming process, you don't recognize gaslighting. I don't believe anyway. I could be wrong.
No, I think you're 100, because that's the shift of reality. Because even they've accepted it to the point where they've learned to justify it. So if there's any, Connie, you're 100% correct. If there's any, so guys, you know, sometimes we have that inner voice, but sometimes we don't want to listen to the inner voice because we know the inner voice may require us to commit to an action that could cause greater conflict, even though longer term it would bring us the resolution we want. We're just so concerned with that first fucking step. That we're not willing to go through that initial conflict, because again, I'm used to this now. But Connie's 100% correct, because eventually what happens is you learn to accept the reality as this is what it is. Doesn't mean I agree with it. You know, we talked about this before. When I accept something doesn't mean I agree with it, but when I accept it, I could also be accepting it in a manner where I'm hopeless, I'm trapped, I deserve it. I mean, I don't know what the context is of why I accept that reality, but having said that, it's still in an effort to let you know that is my reality. So however I justify the reality to myself, I mean, I could say, you know, I deserve it, you know, I'm trapped, whatever it is, it's still my reality based on those justifications. So on the other side, if you go to break that person away from that reality, you got to remove them from justifications and start really reasons. You know, basically, you know, even if it comes to building up their ego, or, you know, it's hard. I think when they're at this point here, there's just so much, because you know what the funny thing is, Connie, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this too. You're shifting a belief. And that's extremely hard to do once it settles at this level. It's extremely hard to settle, to shift the belief.
But you've shifted my belief in myself, right? And so it isn't just a belief. When you've managed to gain this level of control, I no longer believe in myself. I am now leaning on someone else for my thoughts, my opinions, my feelings, my emotions. And in return, you just got to make me feel good about myself. So it's kind of like, this is really like getting to this point is for me where it's very difficult, because now I don't even trust me. I don't trust me, right? And so you could, I mean, prayerfully, you know, someone who loves you is going to be like, girl, what is going on? Or guy, right? Like, because it could happen either way. I mean, we don't have a lot of examples that I'm aware of where women are the predators, but that doesn't mean that they aren't. I just feel like there's a requirement for an outside intervention at this point, because you won't be able to see anything clearly yourself.
You said something that I think goes from the second stage of grooming, which was fostering dependency, which falls under the isolation, but that also truly bleeds into this right now when it comes to control. Is when you're talking about dependency. You know what's funny? When you have the predator and they're looking to foster dependency, we actually looked at it as more of you not being dependent on everyone else. You're going to become dependent on me. I'm on the pedestal, screw everyone else. But you're right. You maybe you do start to lose the dependency or the independence that you have in yourself. So you're also giving that over. So once you start to give that over, that's where the true control. I mean, I think that may be the biggest thing, because when you start giving the independence over, you're giving over your control of you. So I think there is a shift there, and I think you're right. I think if you're dealing with a person who's fully under the control of a predator, I can't trust the people around me, and I can't trust myself. And you know what's funny? In the context of how you said it, I am going to equate dependence to trust in regards to myself. Can I depend on me? Which I equate to, can I trust myself? I can't.
Right.
Giving it to him. So whatever I see has got to be true. And even if I believe there's a conflict in what he's showing me, and that maybe there is a concern, I'm going to minimize it by saying, well, I deserve it anyway. Right?
Mm-hmm.
At that point?
Yeah.
Now, Connie, this is something definitely I'm sure you see, the instilling fear or threats for total control. You see, yeah, you know that. You know that.
I mean, come on. What is it? You know what I mean? So when you're at a point where you're not trusting yourself, or when you're so dependent on the person, right? I just imagine that instilling fear or threats almost paralyzes you, right? Like, I am not going to do anything that is going to push me to realize any of these fears or these threats. Anything that is going to somehow prevent me from receiving this unconditional love. Anything that is going to somehow make this person either even more aggressive and abusive or more detached. Things that I don't want to feel or don't want to have to experience. I'm going to avoid all of it. Right. So I think about, women who came into the shelter who they didn't leave because they were afraid. The fear was there already. This is what he said he was going to do to my mother or to my dog or to my son. He was going to tell everyone in the town or tell everyone at my job, right? Those were the things that made women stay, so that instilling fear or the threats, it definitely reinforces the control.
Yeah, and think about the timing of this all, guys. Think about this. So now if I create this reality where your family doesn't care about you, whatever it is, because remember, I did the separation part. So basically at this point here, I have full control. You're totally on the outside of your family. So they're not, you have no resources available. I've definitely built a bridge between you guys. My threats, the fear I'm instilling has a lot more weight because you have no help. Oh, you want to go to the law enforcement? They'll just release me the next day. And then you're really going to deal with it. So what I'll do is, if I'm going to instill a threat or a fear, and this
nobody's
is again
going to
part
believe
of control.
you.
No one's going to believe you. So what I would have to do, let's say we're at this point now where I got total control. So I already isolated you from family, friends, whatever it is. So I have total control. Mm-hmm. Now it gets to a point where maybe you're starting to have some doubt. So now I think the instilling fear and threat would come in when I feel that I'm losing a bit of it. I don't think it's something I'm going to employ every moment because it's going to lose in its power.
It's edge.
It's going to, it's edge, right? Because again, I'm giving you all these flattery and I'm the guy. And then all of a sudden, if I have to decide to use a threat. Either it's going to be subtle at first, maybe passive even. But if I'm outright going to do a threat, I'm not going to do it all the time. I'm going to do it when I feel that at this point, that's all I have to keep you in line. So I'm not going to be this lovey-dovey anymore. It's going to be, this is my last resort. This is all I have left. But mind you, when I do that, I have to be, in order to have full control, I have to know what are your routes. So when, if I give you this threat, I have to be able to make sure that I think ahead of what you could possibly do with that threat. And I need to get ahead of that and tell you, yeah, we'll try this, that, and this, and it won't work. And that adds to the validity of the threat, because now it's truly putting you in a situation where you're trapped. You know, it does. If I'm able now to control, if I give you a threat and I'm able now to control how you view your efforts to step away from me, because now I threatened you, but it's like, no, you can go all these places. It's not done. It's not done. Whatever the case may be, now you truly don't have a way to leave the threat. So that, I think, will now force you to say, you know what? You're right. I'm wrong. And then settle back into the reality. And then that person's going to shift and probably say, and this is I don't know, but tell me if this is right, Connie, because again, you made me do this. So now you're going to play the guilty card. You made me step out. You know, you're not even thinking about me. You made me angry. I didn't want to say that to you, but I had to say it to you because you want control of your life. Not kidding, but you know what I'm saying. But you know what I'm saying, right? I mean, now in order for me, because remember, guys, the short-term thing at that point is get the threat out, right, to the person under control. That's the predator part, right? Get the threat out. Eliminate the resources. So now I got her, but that's the physical side of it all. But what's the long-term plan is I still got to maintain this manipulative relationship. So I'm going to have to come back in 5 or 10 minutes like every abuser does. And hey, you made me do it or whatever it is, to just kind of instill the fact that I got to manipulate this relationship. You can't manipulate a relationship very long on just intimidation and fear. It becomes very draining. So you're going to have to try to, guys, I'm talking as if I'm a true predator here, but the predator is going to have to try to balance that out. So I think, if they start to run their game, their control totally on intimidation and fear, I think, to be honest with you, that's when they start to lose control. And that's when it may become easier for you to take the person out. If that makes sense, because now the person is kind of, aware. It's like, okay, now I can get the person out now, or make the efforts to get the person out. The only big thing about that is the shift in reality is really not a shift. It's going to be the person believes they've earned, they deserve it. So now your interaction with them is going to be more of, you don't deserve this. You deserve a better life and whatever it is. So because it's no longer the manipulation of the relationship, it is literally the extreme. So now that's pulling the person out into safety. So there would be a different approach if you had to intervene. If you're intervening on that level, I think it's not easy, but it becomes a lot easier than as if you're trying to intervene when the person is still manipulating the relationship itself based on whatever the emotional. Well, we're going to get to that, the emotional blackmail, because that would be a softer, believe it or not, still messed up in a sense, but we kind of talked about that, right? It's like making you so dependent on me making you feel good or whatnot that I could take it away at any moment. And I think that has scars just as much as the physical. Would you agree with that, Connie?
Absolutely. That emptiness, no one wants to feel that, right? No one wants to have to feel that feeling of, I don't know, entrapment. I'm just trying to think of like the words here, because
you froze. He comes back.
Knowing that you've given such a huge part of yourself to someone, and they can now use it against you, is just, I think, a level of hurt, or a level of actually, it could be an awakening, right? Like, I'm trying to look at it from a positive lens. I mean, there really is no positive lens of emotional blackmail. However, I do feel like there is a counter to that. Like you can either get the person to do all the things that you want them to do, or this is the point at which the person realizes, I got to get up out of here. Look at what's going on right now. This person's leaving me with no choice. Look at how I'm feeling right now. You know, all the things that happen with this in this emotional blackmail space. Um, I would like to think that, you know, the victim has an awakening, but I know there are moments where this emotional blackmail um is very effective, right? And
Right.
they can get the person to do whatever they want them to do, because the fear of the truth coming out is too much. The
Right.
fear of the possibility of losing the person may even be too much.
I want to ask you something though, Connie, in your experience, because
Mhm.
you got me thinking of something. I didn't want to lose my thought here. When you deal with obviously those that have been through emotional abuse and those that have been through physical abuse, which am I right? Is it usually the physical abuse at this point? Maybe it's easier to separate or make the efforts to, as opposed to emotional abuse where they're still kind of entangled
Correct.
or
So
confused.
the wound, the physical wound is going to heal, right? The black eye isn't going to stay black. So the reminder of the black eye will go away when you look in the mirror and it's gone now, right? But the reminder of the emotional abuse that you endured, it will replay in your head probably for forever, right? I mean, yes, there is a whole healing journey that you have to go on in order to sort of bounce back from such an emotionally devastating experience. But the reality is that when they get to a point of almost becoming themselves again, and they start to question, how did I get there? Right? It is the it is the reflection, right? That they're like, where did this go left? What was it? Right? And then they start to think of all the times that it happened, all the times that the person was emotionally abusive, all the times that they played mind games or they did the things to them that had them under their thumb for such a long time.
Yeah, I like that. I just wanted to make sure. I thought that was interesting where that kind of went into. I have one more area here related to control, and then I want to obviously give some tools real quick on how you can, if you are involved where you feel that this could be happening to you, ways that maybe you could step out. So we already did physical control, kind of did the financial control, and did the emotional blackmail, which we just did, and we did the instilling threats. The one last thing I have for here is the creating a crisis. I've seen this happen where the manipulator. So guys, manipulators is not just about manipulating the person. They can manipulate situations. Let's just put that out there. They can manipulate situations that, as we talked about, shifts your reality and you start to believe that this person is truly needed in your life. One of the things here, creating a crisis, maybe is, if you leave me, I'll take your kids. You don't have no money. I'll get the kids. They create a crisis that can make you want to stay, because the crisis is an effort to get you to be more dependent on them. Does that make sense, Connie?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a crisis creates the situation, right? The crisis um, creates the let me show you that you need me, right? The crisis creates the I'm your hero. The crisis creates the what would you do without me, right? So here I am setting the stage for me to show you how important I am in your life. And so the fact that I can create a situation and be the hero in it and reinforce that you need me all in one. Like what better thing for me to do other than create yet another emotionally intense situation that creates us with another bond, a bond that's now going to show you that we are meant to be. I
Right.
am the one for you.
Right. And however, again, it's not even so much about the emotion at that point. It's more about the situation driving the relationship now. So look at all the things this person can control as a predator. They can control you. They can control, to some extent, as we mentioned, your emotions, physically, and then they can control the situation. I mean, there's really nothing that you can do that to really truly escape on you.
The
You really got to.
situation that they created, no less.
Yeah, and the thing is, it really is an intentional effort on your end to step forward, because you know what's funny, Connie? Once you take that step forward, you start to see reality the way it is, as opposed to accepting it. So the last part I have here, real quick, guys. Oh, they have the money, the job, the cars, everything, the home. They get your kids. Yeah. So Janice is definitely feeding what we're saying, because she's 100%. She said something powerful right above here, which I thought was wanted to thank her for sharing. It goes, their voice replays over and over again. You start believing all the meaningful things they said, and it starts to give you PTSD and anxiety.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of give some advice. I don't want to just leave it where I'll be, especially if there's no witnesses. Yeah, well, I think it's 1, 2, 3 things I want to add, and this is more in an effort to try to break away from this. So again, predators, however long-term the plan is, for some it could be short-term. These are some of the behaviors. Again, some of it could be super quick, some of it could take years. But usually, to be honest with you, if I'm trying to manipulate a game, and again, I'm out in the real world, inmates may have all the time in the world, so these games could be a lot longer. But outside in the real world, I mean, yeah, they could be long. But if you're an easy target, if you're gullible, you're vulnerable on any level, a speedier process with a big reward, why would I not want that? So the first thing I have here is awareness of tactics, which we kind of gave over just now. So basically recognizing the stages and tactics of grooming can help prevent manipulation before it progresses too far. So the generalized stages, Connie, was the building of trust. And I think a big thing about the building of trust for me is speed. The speed of the development of the trust. The second part was isolation, so you're being cut off. The last part was control. So in regards to the generality of awareness of tactics, any advice within those 3 stages?
Advice.
Like tips. Like tips. I'm sorry. When it comes to making, are these tactics being employed on you? How do you recognize?
I mean, I don't really know that there are tactics in a sense, right? Like I think the first step is being able to recognize the abuse, right? Can you recognize that, or even acknowledge that the relationship was abusive or manipulative? I think oftentimes individuals who are victims may at times rationalize or minimize the behavior, right? Um, because it made them feel good, right? So, but it wasn't that bad. This is what they did, right? I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is really just when you recognize your self-worth, it's hard to stay in that emotional space of trust, right? I now recognize my self-worth. So you no longer have my trust, right? Because I am playing back all the things you said and you did. And so the trust is gone, right? I think I don't know that there's a way for you to stay under the thumb once you've had that aha moment.
Yeah, I like what Janessa said too. Spot on everything that you're saying. And she also said, I wanted to say thank you, but I could just say it to her instead of writing it. But she said, that's 100%. I wish I knew 4 years ago what I know now. And thank you both for doing this live, because someone who is going through this early in the relationship will have a good chance. Yes, hopefully we share it out. I mean, I kind of figured when we talked about predators, me and kind of thought it would cross into this. That's why domestic violence was a big part of it. But granted, it plays on all levels, not just for the domestic violence, but predator versus prey. And I wanted to mention sometimes. Yeah, the reason why I broke away from Wade Wilson is if I put him in guys. So here's the fine: you put Wade Wilson in, you get all the people coming to your channel. But once you try to break away from that, which eventually I want to do, I want to talk about other things. It's not as active. So now it's really about the audience showing support to what's being done on the channel. And I want to mention something for me and Connie. Outside of working in corrections of what we've done, we're also, believe it or not, I mean, even though I have a degree in psychology, all that stuff, and Connie has her degrees, we're highly empathetic people. Mm-hmm. To the point where sometimes we become paranoid and looking for the whys and the motives behind things. So I think that truly makes us understand the world at a very deep level. I mean, are we 100% right? No, but we'll give you 6 to 10 reasons why someone wants to do something. And, we'll make a guess, but we'll give you 6 to 10 reasons. So I have 2 more, Connie, real quick. So I had awareness of tactics. Well, I put tactics, but I get what you're saying. Support systems. So the awareness of tactics, I think when it came to the building of trust, that was more for maybe that first stage, but we did bleed it in a little bit. When it comes to support systems, we're talking more about the second stage of isolation. So you have encouraging open communication and trusted open communication with trusted friends, family, or professionals can help victims resist isolation and seek help. Does that make sense to you, Connie, at all?
I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, so we know that that's how they get in, right? They get in because they've had the ability to isolate you and to remove you from anyone who's going to tell you anything contrary to what he's doing. I think your reality is that when sort of the contact has been cut off from sort of the outside world, right? So outside of this situation, you no longer have anyone or anything, or at least you don't think you do, right? And so I think that it's important as we be intentional about reconnecting to our support systems that you're able and willing to tell the story. This is what happened, right? And it's without you worrying about who's going to judge you, because people are going to judge anyway, right? But the more important thing is that your health and well-being is at the center. It is the motivation for why you're doing this thing. So if someone doesn't understand, or they feel some kind of way, or they're judging you, like for me anyway, I feel like that doesn't matter as much as it matters that you're reconnecting to the people who care about you.
Yeah, and the last one, guys, kind of relates to that. It's just seeking the help, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. If you are a victim, it really is. You have to really recognize that you got to take the initial step, because we could try on the outside, but the courage is really for you to manifest it on the inside, to make the first step, and then know for a fact that when you're ready, we'll do our best to mitigate all risk. Hey, Connie, anything you'd like to say in closing? It's a good dialogue.
Oh my goodness. I would like to say, coming out from under the thumb of a predator certainly is a process that requires your courage. It requires support, and it does certainly require empowerment, right? I think victims need to recognize the manipulation, certainly seek out support networks, especially when you first see it happening, right? Like, we like to second guess, is it really happening? Did I just see what I saw? Yeah, you saw what you saw, right? Like, don't second guess that feeling that you had, like that feeling's real. And then I think it's the establishing the boundaries and certainly severing the ties with the victim, right? There's no need for him to check up on you or her to check up on you. There's no need to have any random exchanges or conversations or anything, right? Like, there needs to be a clean cut. And then I think the recovery process is going to involve just reclaiming your self-worth, right? Like, challenging these sort of distorted beliefs that were being instilled in you over whatever period of time. And then in some cases, it is getting legal protection, right? Like, do you have an order of protection? Do you have, and I've heard many nightmare stories about orders of protection. So I use that loosely, but having legal protection is important. And I think seeking out legal advice to make sure your protections are legal, your protections are solid, I'm sorry, would be most important. But ultimately, I think um, healing from the trauma of, you know, being under the thumb of a predator requires patience. So have a little grace, right? Give yourself some grace. It requires self-compassion. And, you know, as you work hard, you will build your life free of control and abuse.
Yeah, I mean, but that's kind of why we had the dialogue here. I mean, technically, guys, the dialogue, the idea came to me after I was watching stuff on Ted Bundy. I'm actually reading a good book now by Kevin Sullivan, which kind of talks about how he was and how smooth he was, and he was a predator. I'm trying to get someone on that was a victim to his crime that survived. I'm working on it now. I sent her a message because I think she's one of the few people that saw the monster. You know, everybody else saw the good person, but, you know, she actually saw the monster and actually survived him. But, you know, sometimes it's not that easy to get the people on the channel, but I'm working on it. That's why got to get those followings up. So once you start getting to a certain number of followers, it's easier to get interviews and the plays have to be real. So hopefully if you guys like it, share it out. And as always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. Stay safe.